I'm very honored to have this opportunity to interview my next guest. She's from Canada. Her name is Lisa Boehm, and her life changed forever when her daughter suddenly died in a car accident. She quickly discovered that our society, as we've come to know during the pandemic and just the past few years with, struggling with death and loss and grieving, and she made it her mission to change that. In her book, Journey to Healing, A Mother's Guide to Navigating Child Loss, she shares her experience with grief and how it intensified her love for her daughter. Now she focuses on gratitude and living intentionally as a way to honor her daughter's memory. Lisa is an author, speaker, certified grief educator who helps bereaved moms move beyond the pain to find peace and purpose. Thank you so much, Lisa. Please, I just really thank you, first of all, for your courage and vulnerability. And tell us about your journey and any tips you have for moms who are struggling and navigating similar journeys.
Well, as you and I were speaking about just briefly before we hit record, it seems that it's just almost the natural response that we just completely retract from society, our family, our friends, because we really truly feel that nobody can possibly know this pain. Even though in our heads we know that other families have lost children, but it is really the most lonely place. And we truly feel alone. So it's very, very normal, I think, to isolate. But what I found on my own journey was that the power of healing lies within other moms who have walked on this path. Because suddenly, when you share your story, or even listen to other people share their stories, you're instantly thinking, I know exactly what you're thinking. I know exactly what you're feeling. And it's really a road that is best traveled together.
So, how did you start your journey? I mean, I'm sure it just is unexpected. Can you describe? Are you okay with describing
Sure.
the start?
There's moments in our lives, I think we all have them, when our lives become defined as before and after. For some people, it's the pandemic. For some people, it's a cancer diagnosis or other significant event. And it was Katie's death. Um, my husband, my son, and I don't think we will ever forget the minute details of when police officer and the coroner came to our home to tell us that Katie had been involved in a fatal accident. And it's so surreal because I can literally remember sitting on the couch. The officer that came to our home, he pulled up an ottoman, a stool right in front of the couch. And on the couch was my husband on my left and my son on my right. And after a while, I kind of tuned out the officer. And I just remember looking over to my son, who was 15 at the time, very difficult time in all of our lives, and just thinking, oh my goodness, what is this going to do to him? While that may not have been a pivotal moment in my grief journey, looking at my son at that moment did plant a seed in my soul somewhere where I knew that I had to figure this grief thing out if I was going to hold my marriage together and if I was going to help support my son through the most difficult time of his life. So that was the moment we found out. And probably like anybody who's gotten news similar to ours, it was just a moment of disbelief. It can't possibly be happening to us. My husband, um, he didn't argue with the officer by any means, but he said, are you sure? He kept saying, are you sure? How do you know? And I mean, they had her wallet, they had everything that they needed to make that um, to make that call. But It just has really defined our lives, but I refuse to let it define who I am.
Wow, that's pretty powerful because I think many of us do define, those pivotal moments, like you said, and we
Mhm.
become that loss.
Yeah.
How did you get to that mindset?
My daughter, she was 17 and a half when she died, and she was just coming into her own. Our relationship was just kind of in that changing phase of just mother-daughter to becoming friends, and she was just becoming very articulate and very clear in her life dreams, passions, and the direction that she wanted to go in. And I remember some stuff coming out of her mouth well before the accident. And it was, Brene Brown kind of quotes, and just go live your best life, and don't let the little things hold you back. And, as crazy and bizarre as it sounds, I do feel like, I carry a piece of her in my heart all the time. And the other thing is, I do feel, you know, or feel that she's talking to me sometimes. And there were times in the very, very beginning, you are so deep in the grief hole, that you just can't see the light of day, and you can't see ever climbing out of this. But I could almost hear her say, Mom, get up off the floor. I don't like watching this. And you're not able to help my brother, and you're not able to help my dad. Get up. And that kind of transitioned over time to, I wonder what she thinks when she sees me doing things, just milling around. And I just really got this strong sense that I needed to become her voice, and that I needed to carry on her memory, but in a way that wasn't defined by this car accident. That together, she and I have this big message to deliver, which was that there is more to death than grief, and that there is discovery, and there is beauty, and there is purpose. And in the beginning, it just seems like, what? This doesn't even, how can these words even belong in a conversation that has something to do with grief? But I discovered that the more I worked on my grief, the closer I felt to Katie, her spirit, whatever you want to call it, her memory. So the more I worked on my grief, the more I felt guided by her.
Wow. And so, how long did it take to make a decision to turn it into a book?
Well, it's funny. I never really would have considered myself a writer. If you would have asked me 10 years ago if I was going to write a book, I would have laughed and said that I had a greater likelihood of scaling Mount Everest. Not that I'm a climber, but that was more likely to happen. But my daughter was a writer. And she was also a high level competitive dancer. And I sat through plenty of dance competitions and, all that kind of thing. And one afternoon, I had this recurring image in my head, and it was a dance routine, but there was a number of dancers on the stage, and they were, late teens, early 20s, young adults, and they all carried these brown suitcases. And it was a very lyrical, expressive, modern style of dance that my daughter would have danced in. And really, all I did was I pulled out my laptop and I started typing, and the words just flowed out of me. And I wrote this short story in a matter of minutes, and it was all about the suitcase. And that's actually what starts off my book. And it's a short story just about a man bringing this suitcase to my door, and how heavy and awful and gross it was. And I didn't know what to do with it. And it was ugly. And at the very end of the short story, I become courageous enough, brave enough to unzip that suitcase and look inside, open it up all the way. And inside of that suitcase, I discovered all things beautiful, beautiful memories, and love. So it really is a metaphor for grief. So anyway, I wrote this short story, and I had a few people actually offer to publish it. And I said, I think this is meant for something bigger. I don't know what it is. So I think I was about 1.5 years in on my grief journey. And I said to my husband, I want to write a book. And he said, well, what? What are you going to write about? What do you possibly have to write about? I said, I want to write a story about grief, and not just, there's obviously Katie's a part of my book, but I interview 31 other moms. And it's really a healing focused book. And I said, I want to take all the things that have helped me and I want to share them with other people because, I just really wanted someone to say, here, this might help. So I said, okay, well, what's that going to look like? And I said, I don't know, but I have to use that short story. So that's where the journey to healing comes in, because I needed it to tie in with a suitcase and taking a journey. And it really just flowed out of me, this book.
Do you think she somehow helped you, guide you to write the words? Because it sounded like it just
100%.
flowed.
100%. And I'm holding up a book now. I know your listeners can't see it, but the
Beautiful.
pen name I use is Lisa K. Boehm. I wanted Katie to have a place on the cover. And it's funny how things work, because when I was working with my publisher, they said, you need a website and you need this and that. Well, Lisa Boehm was taken. LisaBoehm.com was not an option. So I thought, well, now what do I do? And that's when I thought, well, okay, Lisa K. Boehm. So yes, I do
Wow.
think that she helped me write this book.
So, any tips on moms who are just starting this journey? Or maybe they are having a hard time, navigating. They've been on it for a while because sometimes you're not ready. Like you said, you're deep in that dark hole, and you
Mhm.
don't even know if you're ready to crawl out.
I think the single best thing that I did on my journey was to connect with other grieving moms. I know that there's a gajillion Facebook groups for bereaved parents and loss and all of that kind of thing. I would say take some time, find the right fit, because unfortunately, some groups are very, very dark. I couldn't be in those dark places. I needed something more uplifting. So check out the online space if you don't think you're quite ready for face-to-face. When you're ready, I highly recommend a group where you can get together, even on Zoom. There's something to be said about the pandemic and making everybody more comfortable with Zoom, because at least on Zoom, we can see one another. We can
Hmm.
interact, we can read body language. Face-to-face is great as well. And I always talk to moms about building their team. I don't think there's one single solitary answer to grief or loss or any struggle in life. I truly believe that it's a good idea to have your family physician on board. Make sure that they know what you're experiencing. If they suggest medication or a psychiatrist, be open.
Hmm.
I think that we need other moms, people walking in our shoes. We need those people. We need family. We need friends. We just really need to explore all the tools. And honestly, aside from that, self-care was something that I continue to this day, over 6.5 years out. Self-care is a part of my day. It has to be for my mental well-being, above and beyond everything else, but my physical well-being. Getting outside, getting fresh air, eating properly, moving my body. I just I think it does something for us even if it just gave me the belief that I could hang in there for another 15 minutes. But
Hmm.
moving my body did make me feel like I could survive.
Any tips on moms who have children who, like you said, your son, you felt that you probably were responsible for like holding your family together, especially with the marriage and being mom still, right? What do you do?
Oh, that's a tough one. I felt like it's so true what they say, everyone grieves differently. Even the three of us in my house, you marry this person because you have similar outlooks on everything, aspirations, goals. Maybe you parent similarly, maybe you have same financial outlooks. But when it came to grief, I don't think my husband, my son, and I could be further apart. um, I can certainly see why marriages do end, because it's a huge wedge between you, and you really do need to respect the differences that you are all experiencing. But in regards to my son, I read something so powerful in a book, and it just made me second guess my, not so much my grief, but my grief in respect to my son. It was a book that interviewed grown children of families who had lost a child. So these grown children were interviewed. They had lost brothers and sisters at an earlier age. And almost unanimously, they all said that they felt that they were less important than the one who died. And wow, did that pack a punch with me. And I thought, I do not for a second want my son to think that he was any less loved or any less important than his sister. So I really chose, even those days when I didn't want to get out of bed, I chose to put my feet on the ground for him, because I thought, regardless whether Katie is here or Katie is not here, he deserves a mom and a family who are there for him and who are going to celebrate the days and support him on the hard days. But it was really important for me to be, as I say, plugged in as possible for him.
Wow, that's a book that I think everyone should read along with yours because I think we don't realize our children's journey, based on the experiences that it's different, right? From a mother's perspective, even from your husband. How did the family adapt? Because now, instead of family of four, you have family of three.
One thing that we did, and I'm so grateful, is that we started taking little trips together. I don't think we did anything significant, anything super expensive, but you're absolutely right. We had to learn how to be a family of three. And that might sound a little bit odd, but when you've got an empty chair at the supper table or glaringly obvious things, there's a huge hole in your family dynamic. We had to figure this out. So, you know what it's like when you're at home, you find a closet to clean out, or your 15-year-old is on his device from sun up till sundown. So we thought, let's just get out of here as much as we can. And that really helped us learn how to be a family of three. And we learned how to experience things that weren't always connected to Katie, because, like it or not, that's what your new normal is. And I kind of have a love-hate relationship with that term, but it is. It's a new reality. You've got to figure out how to live life without your person, without your child. So that was something that I would encourage other families to do, is get away, even if it's just an overnight hotel stay, maybe it's the next town over, but just practice, really practice being this new family.
Do you think creating new memories helps too?
Definitely. And for the first year or so, we would take some of Katie's cremated ashes with us. I know that maybe is not a comfortable thing for everybody to do, but Katie loved to travel and she loved the ocean, and she loved going down to visit her grandparents in Arizona. So there's little bits of Katie all over the world. Um, and that it became to be almost a little ritual that we had, that we would find the most beautiful spot or the most meaningful spot, and we would kayak out into the ocean and release these ashes amongst the dolphins or whatever it was. um, and that was something special that we did.
Wow, that's beautiful. So, can you describe how you're helping others with their journey?
Well, as I said, I think connection with other moms get it is a
Mm.
big part of the healing process. And I will
You
answer
offer
your question
that?
in just a
Sorry.
second, but I use the word healing a lot, and I know
Mm.
that word can create a lot of resistance with people. Frankly, I don't think I could find a better word to describe just the forward movement. I don't think we'll ever be healed. I don't think that it's an endpoint, but it's just that forward movement. But what I do now is that I run a private support group for grieving moms who want to work on their healing. So it's not necessarily for everybody, especially in the beginning, but when people are ready to start that healing work, because grief is work, we get together once a week on Zoom. I bring in guest speakers, or we'll have a group discussion, and we do breakout rooms. We do things like member mixers. Members have access to me for live Q&As. So if there's something that's really, really making them feel stuck, they can come on to the live calls, and we'll talk about all things like marriages or our children, or, difficult situations they find themselves in. So I run that, and it's a very, very small group. But it's been a very, very helpful group. And it's just such a beautiful thing to see these moms coming in who are all broken. We're all broken, but they're holding each other up and they're reaching out each other's hands. Granted, this is on Zoom. We've got people from all over the world. Let's walk together. I know
Wow.
you're having a bad day. I know today is your son's angel anniversary. I wanted to reach out. I wanted to give you a virtual hug. So that's really meaningful work that I have started doing.
How do they reach you?
You know what? The easiest way is griefsupportformoms.com. And you can find all the resources there. And I've also got lots of free resources. As I said, I know this kind of group situation may not be a comfortable space for people off the hop, but I also have a free 5-part video series to get people started, and meditations and all of that kind of thing for free on my website.
Does your husband and your son, just out of curiosity, are they open to meditations? I know sometimes people meditate differently. It could just be like walking, or I have a dad who just rides his motorcycle. How do they perceive or accept, that idea?
Again, this is where my husband and son and I are all very, very different. I really dove into the spiritual side
Mm-hmm.
of living with grief. Maybe that's because I'm female, I don't know, but my husband thinks in spreadsheets. He's more of the
Mm-hmm.
logical, type. He doesn't. That's not his comfort zone. But he has found things that he finds soothing for himself. At the beginning, actually, he created a Katie document on the computer, and every memory that popped into his head, he would document it in this computer. He would, start downloading photos and all of that kind of thing. So that was his space to be quiet with his thoughts. And my son was, he loves, he loves cars. He loves to fix them. He likes to take them apart, but he loves to drive. And for him, it was very, very cathartic. And I think it still is for him just to jump in the car and go for a drive. And I've had a couple of psychics tell me that Katie enjoys going on those drives with him.
Wow. That's so amazing. Any closing words? Because this has been so, I think, like we mentioned earlier, the loss doesn't even have to be related, people can connect with you. I mean, I know with your groups it's specific, but just hearing you, you're just so calming, so healing, and I think compassionate. Um, any final words on just reminding people who have lost hope? Some of us, I think especially if it's too new, or some people, right? It's been 20 years and it's still difficult. Any words for them?
I think you hit the nail on the head. I think having hope is just so crucial for anybody who's in a situation that they're struggling. And sometimes we have to find that hope. We have to find that hope. And sometimes it's looking for mentors who aren't even in our space. Maybe they haven't had the same struggles as us, but their words resonate, or it's a book. I think that continuing search for resources, like as I said, we never get to a point where we're completely healed or fixed,
Mm-hmm,
or
mm-hmm.
it's just to keep looking for the sunshine.
That is true because sometimes we think, I can't wait to be healed. And you really look at this end point, not realizing, like what you said, it's really an ongoing journey. And Deslin Hawkius, who connected me with you, sometimes it's like a mixed, tangled web of wires that you really don't have, like, okay, now I'm up here, then I'm going to be down here. It's not even a roller coaster, right?
Mhm.
And it's something that's, like you said, different for everyone,
Yeah,
right? And I just love this journey that you've taken. I can just feel Katie just smiling and so proud of what you're doing because you're making a global difference and a tribute to her. So I really appreciate you making the time for this. And I would love to connect with you later. I think a lot of moms, like you said, it truly is important to build a tribe. And sometimes it could be different walks of life or different experiences. But when we connect and then you feel that you're not alone, and it's just that brings us hope.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow. Thank you so much. And I look forward to connecting with you later. Take care and thank you again.
My pleasure.
Bye.
Bye bye now.